Hello everybody, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. This is Joe. We're going to talk some history today. And what I want to start with is colonial history, pre-Revolutionary War. And we're going to talk about the Albany Congress today in 1754 and compare it to the 1787 Constitutional Convention. And this is pre-Revolutionary War period of time. So we're going to go about a half an hour here. And we're going to begin with the most important part is why. Why are we having this Congress here of 1754? Remember the time in 1754, we didn't actually have what you would think of Congress as today. It was mainly developed through the British Parliament, and I'll explain to you why that was in a few minutes. So in 1754, we had these states get together. One was Rhode Island, one was Connecticut, one was Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, and if I'm not mistaken, Rhode Island and New Hampshire. And what's kind of interesting about some of these states, remember, in the 1787 Constitutional Convention, New Hampshire showed up late. They were very late, about a month late if I'm not mistaken. And Rhode Island never participated in the Constitutional Convention, but they did here in the Albany Congress of 1754. Now, here's the difference. Now, look at Albany Congress of 1754 and the Constitutional Convention in 1787. Okay? Now, let's look at 1754. Why was this happening in 1754? Okay. Now, the colonists were not looking for what? We were not looking to gain freedom, break from the king, all this. I know there was rumblings going on there. There was the Molasses Act. There was other stuff going on. There was taxation. There wasn't a Stamp Act at the time. It was later. But there was other issues. Parliament. We had the House of Burgesses and small things like that, but still had to be run by the King's governors, so we had to get approval from the King's governors to do anything. So at this time, what we had was, it was interesting, what we had here was we had the King, I think it's King George I. I could be wrong on that, I'll have to make sure, that were having issues within the colonies, and they knew this, so they asked and developed this Albany Plan Congress through the British Parliament. Now, the British Parliament was looking ahead and saying, okay, we're going to have problems with these issues. One is Indians in the unfounded lands or unsettled lands. We're going to also have French, dealing with the French, and we're dealing with the Spaniards, but the Spaniards weren't really involved with this, but they were there. And especially, they wanted, the Parliament King wanted the American colonists to develop together, to form a union to protect against what? Against the Indians that weren't settled or they weren't trusted or whatever, and the French. Remember, the French-Indian Wars are just happening or right around that corner, and it was just going to be happening or just had happened. I think 1760s. Now let's look at this. So in 1754, we have what? We have the British government asking the Americans, colonists, to form a union to protect the British government's colonies against Indians and French attack. This is what this Albany Congress was for. So we're trying to develop a congressional Congress to fortify protecting the British product, the British lands, everything the British, protecting the British. And this is interesting about this. Only 18 years earlier, in the future, okay, In 1776, we're going to declare the Declaration of Independence. Okay? And we're going to, and in 1787, we're going to have a new country, or 1787 we have the Constitution Convention, and then on top of that, we're going to have, what are we going to have on top of that? We're going to have some Revolutionary War, and in 1782 the war's going to be over. How many years is that? It's very close to what's happening here in 1754, 1760s, and then in the 1770s. See, it's a tumultuous time between 1754 and 1776. 1760s were really difficult in the American colonies for the British. Okay, it took a lot from the American colonies to break off. But here's a couple of important things about this. Really critical. Here's number one, and let's compare it to 1787. Why did the Constitutional Convention pass and get voted in, but the Albany Congress didn't get through, didn't pass, and wasn't accepted? Okay. Now, there's a lot of issues we're going through. We're going to go through a lot of these issues at this period of time. We'll spend a little bit of time on the Albany Congress and why and all this what's and who's and all that other stuff. But one of the important aspects of the Albany Congress and the Constitutional Convention is we have to look at the who's. And one of the more important who's was Benjamin Franklin. Okay. That Benjamin Franklin, that American founding father, yes, that Benjamin Franklin that you're thinking of. He was with and leading the Albany Congress of 1754, and was also an integral part of the Constitutional Convention in 1787. Okay, and the Declaration, and all this period within a period of certain years, he was involved with England, France, all these countries. He's using his abilities to negotiate, to get things properly done in order for America to become a country. So here's an important tidbit to understand here. Why did the Albany Congress fail in 1754, but the Constitutional Convention of 1787 did not? Well, here's the important issue that you need to understand. Okay? Number one, the Constitutional Convention was held in secret. Okay? And why was it secret? Because here's the thing is, they did not want the delegates, the 55 delegates, did not want the colonists to know about this, to stop it, to rebel against it, in order to inform the British, because the British were still American soil. There was no constitution where it was illegal or unconstitutional for a soldier to take your property and just live in your house. It was passed in the Constitution in 1790 when the Constitution ratified. So the thing about this is to look at is Constitutional Convention was held in Congress. Was held for what purpose? To get a Constitution of the United States here, to get a land to create an American constitutional republic. Okay, that's what the Constitutional Convention is about. The Albany Compromise, the Albany Congress was about what? Was about creating a force, a country of togetherness to fight, protect against French and Indian wars, to protect the British for their land. Okay, so that's a big deal. Now here's the thing is, the Albany Congress of 1754 was known. The people were against it. Now here's the thing. We got to go delve into more deep rules the way they had back then. Why and what was people thinking? What were people doing? What was on their mind? What was this? Were they afraid? Did they want to form a country? They're against the central government. Because remember, the 1787 Constitutional Convention versus the Albany Congress of 1754, they were completely different, but some things tied together. So in 1754, 1787, they were against a central government. Many of them were, because they didn't want to pay taxes for New York down from Georgia, or from Georgia to New York, and vice versa. But they knew something had to be done. Okay, and when New York was the last state to ratify the Constitution, there you go. Now, when I'm doing my videos here, I appreciate you guys understand. Sometimes I will make mistakes on dates and stuff like that. So I'll try to keep the dates as quick as possible and get them, make sure I don't make mistakes as much as possible. But if I get one wrong, let me know, please, in the comments. So the important thing about this is, in 1754, America wasn't coming together for the Americans. For the Americans, as they say. They're coming together for the British, to protect the British colonies from the Indians and the French. Now, during this period of time, also the Iroquois was created. Indian Nation, 6 Indian Nations, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know much about it, but I do know that they were involved, and they didn't want to get involved because they were trading with both the Indians, they were trading both the French and the British. So they would get involved, and they were doing some trading with the colonists, which is the British at the period of time. So during this period of time, we have French and Indian Wars getting ready to start. We have the British trying to create the Albany Congress to protect itself from Indians and French. We also have the Americans at this period of time are getting tired. Yes, they're getting tired of slavery. Look at the slavery stuff here. It's been going on since 1600s, and they're trying to eradicate slavery as much as possible. Then we have the King of England putting the colonists in war to protect them if there was a war. Now remember, don't forget that George Washington did lead troops in the Continental Congress, and we'll get to that later during the French-American Indian War. So here's the thing. What's happening here is history is expanding like this. It's going like it's expanding. History is expanding. Where America's smartening up. Okay? French is getting overexposed to itself. British are getting overexposed to itself. Indian tribes are combining, getting together. The American public is getting tired of the king's rule and the taxes and all this other stuff. And we're getting tired of importing and exporting of slaves. So all this stuff is happening in America at this time and throughout the world. And don't forget the Dutch Indies and all these other places, okay? And don't forget everything else going on in the world. Because remember, in 1803, Thomas Jefferson had to deal with the Barbary Pirates, which were the first terrorist organization that the world has ever seen. So here's another thing to look at. So we're looking at the Constitutional Convention, and we're looking at the Albany Congress, and we're trying to compare them like I told you before. You see some parallels. But the important thing was, one was secrecy and one was not secret. And the important thing about the Constitutional Convention and the Albany Congress of 1754, in 1754, the delegates, along with Franklin, were not technically looking for independence from Britain at the time. It hasn't gotten that bad yet until the Stamp Act and all those other taxations. Because you know what? The reason that there was a Stamp Act and all these other issues that were being charged to American colonists was because Britain was paying for the war with the French. Okay, and the French-American Indian War was. And also that, and there were also, the French-Indian War was going on in this period. I could be wrong on the dates, please be patient with me. But during this also time, England and France are in war before the Revolutionary War. Now this could come a little bit in the future, but there was a war between England and English and France. So France is fighting the Indians here, and over here they're fighting what? They're fighting the French here. Right? Then they have issues with the parallel with the Canadian border and all these other borders and who's what, and the king is developing the United States, trying to expand the colonies, and that's what he wants to do. He wants to expand the colonies, not only expand the colonies, he wants to eradicate those in the colonies and take over the land. Now remember, this is the same thing happened with the Trail of Tears with with President, I just forgot his name off the top of my head. I might have had okay. And so the issue is, we have the Trail of Tears, and we're having something similar to Trail of Tears in 1700s with British, okay? Andrew Jackson, okay? The Trail of Tears, Andrew Jackson says, okay, we're moving the Indians to the Indian Territory, which at the time would have been Oklahoma Territory. So everything's going on here, man. So when you look at this picture here, what do you see here? These are the delegates from these states: Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, and a few other states. And the important thing is that they're trying to create unity. And the important thing about this is, what's really interesting about this. Now, I know earlier in history that William Penn, in 16th century, the founder of Pennsylvania, tried to create a union. And there was others. Hutchinson, if I'm not mistaken, was trying to create a union in America, but that didn't come through because they didn't have the backing behind it. See, when the Constitutional Convention came by, the Revolutionary War was won, so they had created Congress. Okay? Even though people were still afraid of what might happen, they still were afraid. They still wanted to live under the king's crown because that's what they were used to. Okay? That's what people were used to. They're living under the crown. They were used to that, and they were afraid of the Constitutional Convention. What would happen? Would they be expelled? Remember the Alien and Enemies Act of 1798. This came from that period of time in the Constitution, and in America, what we had to expel those who were undesirables, or those who were undesirable and wanted here in America. Okay? Now, undesirable didn't specifically mean poor, but what it did mean, they were against the country and they were going to do anything to fight it. Now, I know people like Patrick Henry and those, they were anti-constitutional. They didn't want a big government. They wanted a central government. They didn't want a central government. But they understood it. Patrick Henry and those. Okay? So the Albany Plan didn't get created, it didn't pass, it didn't get done. Now we have to ask, why didn't it get done? Now that's for our different plan to look at. Okay? Our plan or conversation, what was the next one to talk about? The one reason to talk about here again is, why did this fail? What happened here? Why did this not come to the war? What happened? Why didn't it fail? And what changed in just a few decades? Okay, everybody, this is Joe. We're talking about the Albany Congress and tying in with the Constitutional Convention and some other stuff here related to American history. I appreciate you guys coming in and out. Thank you very much. Have a great day. And remember, always learn, always educate yourself. And remember, education is the best thing you can have, and know your country, wherever you may be, and know its history. Thank you very much. And have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.